So let's talk a little bit about WrestleMania 37 to close today's episode of Very Cold Lasagna. Like I said before, Edge versus Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship should be a money match. Story and promo wise, I already touched on it. Whether they deliver in the ring remains to be seen when the time comes, when they face off in Tom Brady's house on April 11th? Oh, it's a 2-night thing. So April 10th and 11th. Yeah. So unlike the Universal Championship, the W title scene, it's still messy, but it's at least a little more clear. So you're either going to have Bobby Lashley or Drew McIntyre as your champion, and they're going to, one or the other, is going to be champion going to WrestleMania, as they probably face each other, most likely. You're not going to see Miz as your champion going to WrestleMania. But all three of them are likely going to face each other at Fastlane. And again, Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre probably happens at WrestleMania. Or somehow, in the most unlikely scenario, we get Bobby Lashley versus not Drew McIntyre, Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, if they can somehow convince Lesnar to come back. So other things that I can expect for WrestleMania, I mean, yeah, it's still a long ways away, but all signs still point toward Bianca Belair choosing to challenge Sasha Banks for the SmackDown Women's Championship. I don't see why not. At this point, it's not going to be any surprise. They're still teasing it at this point, but I really don't like the way they're approaching it by teasing, inserting Carmella into the title match, which is dumb. And the Raw Women's title scene, on the other hand, is just garbage. It's in a really bad state right now. I don't know, man. There's no words to describe it. Asuka, yeah, they have really treated her like trash, man. She was supposed to defend the title at Elimination Chamber, but when Lacey Evans it was legit pregnant, they couldn't find a challenger for her. They couldn't, out of all the women they had on Raw, yeah, sure, they don't have anything going for them, when it comes to personality, character, and all that. They had no momentum. They could have at least still used them, maybe had what they did with the US title, have a number one contenders match or something, and then have Asuka face the winner of that on the main show or something. But no, they didn't even bother to do that. They left the Raw Women's title match off the show, and that tells you how they really feel about Asuka. That's nice. And speaking of Asuka, they're probably going to feed her to Charlotte Flair, who is probably going to also feed on Rhea Ripley. That's going to be great. But speaking of Rhea Ripley, we don't know what she's going to be like on the main roster, but all I can say is the rest of the Raw Women's division and the women's division as a whole is being booked like complete afterthoughts. I'm sorry to say it. It's I don't know why. It's they're just being booked like trash. I hate to say it. So let's talk a little bit about the mid-card scene. It's not that interesting either, but for hardcore fans, I guess Big E versus Apollo Crews for the Intercontinental title could be an interesting feud, but for lapsed fans like myself, I don't know. Not really. Matt Riddle is probably going to defend his United States Championship in a multi-man match at Mania. And the tag titles, all around, Raw, SmackDown, Women's, they're probably going to feature those two in meaningless matches. I don't imagine they're going to do the Battle Royale stuff, the Andre and the Women's thing, because, Rona. That's gonna look very bad, especially in front of in your first show back with live fans. That's gonna look really bad. There were talks of having Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt in a Firefly Funhouse match at WrestleMania, but it worked last year with Bray Wyatt versus John Cena, but you're returning with live fans. I don't know if it's going to work this time around. I don't know if you really want to have them sit through another cinematic match like live in attendance. I don't know if that's such a good idea. And then Cesaro versus Seth Rollins, which is probably the direction they're going to go with. It's not, I don't know. It's not really Mania worthy, but I mean, they get something to do on the show at least. But yeah, that's my like Mania like predictions preview. Like what I see, what's going to happen heading on as we're like going towards this road to WrestleMania 37 post Elimination Chamber. But yeah, this is just bad. Like, if you think I'm disinterested, like if I sound disinterested, that's because I am. This road to WrestleMania sucks ass. Outside of, I guess, outside of Edge versus Roman Reigns for the Universal title, and it depending on what they do with Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre. That's still dependent on what they do, the WWE title. But outside of maybe those two matches, everything else is hot shit. It's garbage. It's worse than it was before, and then than it was 2 years ago. It's bad. No one in the WWE, outside of a few names, has any interesting gimmick, any interesting personality, any interesting character attached to themselves. It's all flips, kicks, let's have a match, or let's have the same match again next week and the week after that. Or maybe let's have the same match again, but let's not retread it until a couple weeks later. It's so bad. It is so bad. And it's this lacking factor of no gimmicks, personality, characters, the most important things in wrestling. It's going to shine big when whoever comes for that live crowd at WrestleMania. It's going to be bad, people. It's going to be really bad. But yeah, that's my Mania thoughts to end things off. And that's my recap of the Elimination Chamber and Raw 2. Man, it is such a bad time to be a wrestling fan right now, especially if you're a lapsed one like me, because everything around wrestling, whether it's WWE, AEW, it's such a pile of shit, man. It's all like flips and kicks with no charisma, no story. Like, what happened to wrestling? Like, I didn't think the pandemic would hurt wrestling so much, but it has. It really has. It has shunned so many flaws so much. Like, goddamn.